I'm Marianne Peter, this year's chair of the Historical Foundation of Hillsborough and Orange County, and I'm glad to welcome you here today. I want to first thank the people who put this together. The spark plug behind it all is Kay Crawford. You're going to hear from her. There's nobody who's done more as a member of the board to bring the more recent history, very important history of Hillsborough life than Kay. So she deserves a lot of credit, and I want to thank the Freeland family, many of whom are here today. If you're a member of the Freeland family, would you stand up and get acknowledged, please? I noticed the picture of the Freeland family as it was on the left, your left today, and there's not a more handsome family, I think, in Hillsborough. And the illustrious career of James and Maxine Freeland are going to be studied today, and we're happy for that. If you're a member of the Orange County Historical Museum or the HIPHOC board, you work really hard, and I want to thank them for that. Well, you've got more important stories to hear than mine today, so I want to call Kay Crawford up and thank you again for coming.
I'm so grateful to the Freeland family for allowing me to be a part of this event, and most especially to be a part of their lives. It's gone on for a long time, folks. I guess it's meant to last. So don't run out on me now. Mine. Welcome again, and let the show begin. The Adventures of James, John, and Maxine Hayes Freeland. I am Kay Crawford, and I'm privileged to have known the Freeland family almost all of my life. In 1959, I wrote an editorial in the Hillsborough High School newspaper thanking the Freelands for what they had done for our community, especially the young people. Here I am, 50 years later, doing the same thing. What you're going to see now is a collection of videos, snapshots, and portraits, along with stories of this illustrious family. The Freeland family originally came from Scotland and Northern Ireland and settled in Pennsylvania before coming to Hallfields in North Carolina and then to the New Hope community around 1750. Making their family one of the first European families to settle in Orange County. Now we fast forward several generations to Irvin and Minnie Freeland, parents of James John Freeland. Irvin Freeland was industrious himself. He had his own milk cart. James and Maxine Freeland in their early courting days. And here's Maxine's engagement picture. The loving couple several years later. Probably with their firstborn here, the best we can tell. Now the family has some daughters later on, Donna and Joan. They were dressed up for almost every outing, it seemed.
Growing up with him and Mom was probably the best thing in the world a child could do because we were always entertained. We had entertainment from the time I was probably 6 because he started collecting antique cars until he lived here. So life was very exciting with him. And
now you're going to see an assortment of home videos of the Freeland family. Now, Miss Maxine, she was a looker from the get-go. She set the style and the pace for the family. Jamie and James Ray on their wedding day. Back at the Freeland home again when they lived on Highway 70 near Holiday Park. Easter Sunday, I believe. Check out the corsage. Date the cars. The girls have on their Easter bonnets, and even Jack has on an Easter bonnet. No signs of James Ray. Probably didn't have a bonnet. And here's Beau Brummel, Mr. Freeland himself. And yes, he has his Easter bonnet. And Jack, come on, Jack, get in the parade here. Let's see what you're strutting with today. And Donna, now she was a driver from the early days. Later on, the family was able to enjoy a cruise together in the Bahamas. Then you may have heard about the Great American Road Race. Mr. Freeland was determined to give his grandchildren the experience of a lifetime in a cross-country trip in an old car from California to Florida. Lanny, did you go with him on the Great American Road Race?
Yeah, Jeff, Sam, and I, and several others went on that race, and that was 2 years before he died, or about a year and 7 or 8 months. And that to this day is probably the highlight trip of my life. It seemed like more than a month because it was difficult, but I mean, we made a lot of memories on that trip. I do remember that he would squeeze a nickel till it about popped, but if something, if you spent some money that was something abnormally large, it wasn't near as big a deal. He could see when we went on the Great Race, he told us when we got out to California and were getting the car ready for the race, he told us to take it to this shop called Batista's, which was this world-renowned restoration shop, and have them check the car over. And we were there 5 or 6 hours, and the bill was about $1,800. And this was 1987.
What kind of car was it,
It was
Lanny?
a 35 Ford. And Jeff, Sam, and I were the only ones out there, and none of us wanted to give him the bill. And we had a lot of intense discussions over it, and I lost. But he really wasn't that upset with it. But on the same trip, he had gotten in fact, it was like a couple nights later after he got there, he got this little miniature beer out of a refrigerator in one of the hotels we were staying at. He thought they were free. And then he saw that it was $3 for this little beer that high, and he sent Jeff and I out to find one like it to replace it with, because he wasn't paying $3 for a beer. So I mean, we walked for 2 or 3 hours that night trying to find some place that sold these little bitty beers. Yeah, and Holly was with us too. That was a really good experience, and And when he died, we were working on a car to go again. And, that was 21 years ago. We hadn't made it yet because our driving force hasn't been with us. But
Miss Maxine and her 4 children. And there's Jack with Hayes, his daughter. Maxine and the tribe. Lanny and his family. Joan and Jim's family all together. Joan with her loving granddaughters. Here on the right is James Freeland at Camp Butner. He begins a number of projects in Hillsborough, from houses to restaurants to motels. Fast as you could watch it happen, he was doing it. He was fortunate to have a number of good workers with him throughout the years. Here they were probably making his cinder blocks, which they did for some of his early buildings. Now you're all here at the Daniel Boone, with us at the foot of Daniel Boone himself, the shops at Daniel Boone Village. One of the earliest entertainment features in the village was the giant slide. Now, if you think this wasn't fun on a hot afternoon sliding on tin, and all we had was a tow sack, a burlap bag, folks, to make our way down. 10 cents a ride. That ride didn't last very long. I think it might have been a little bit too hot for some of the customers. Now you'll see Mr. Freeland in front of some of the shops in the village, but above him is you can see the area that has not been developed at this point. And on up further, later on, he built the ice skating rink. And he hauled an ice rink from Williamsburg, Virginia, I understand, to get this one set up and going. Now the truth is told. Maxine Freeland, the driving force behind ice skating here. There's a picture of Lanny.
Entertained too. And as all of us know, Maxine ran the ice rink for years. And it was really heaven for the grandchildren. Pretty much heaven for the mother of some of them too, because I could take them and leave them. But she made so many friends of children, and as well as the children's parents while she was there. And they had just some little rituals. The grandchildren got quarters to play games, and they skated, and they had free Cokes and free candy, and they just had a blast.
Yes. For a while, where Bishop's Cabinet Shop is now located, there was a roller rink. Now, some of you have heard stories about the Pioneer Amphitheater at Daniel Boone Recreation Park. It's said to have seated 6,000. That may have been a little more than it seated, but it certainly was a large facility. And when you look at it, it looked like the Lost Colony. Today, here's all that remains. But hey, couldn't somebody get in there and revive this amphitheater? Don't you think its time has come again? And oh, was this Okanichi train special. We had some good rides on that train, and we had cowboys and Indians the cowboys stopping to rob the train. They'd board the train, pull out their guns, and everybody on there would be horrified. And buffaloes were part of the mix too. Now, everybody that knows Mr. Freeland, knew Mr. Freeland, knows that how much he enjoyed collecting antique cars. Mr. Freeland had a number of wagons and carriages restored. This was a touring bus at Yellowstone before Mr. Freeland found it. To start with, we see an autographed copy of a letter Gene Autry sent to Mr. Freeland. This fire truck is one of the vehicles that Gene Autry bought from Mr. Freeland. He came to Hillsborough to pick it up. The Rulac family carriage. The Rulacs, who lived in the building on Orange Street that became part of Town Hall. This 1902 Cadillac may be the oldest Cadillac that has been found. Now you're going to see a piece from a PM magazine feature that made national news.
Nice to see you. Oprah Winfrey is the host for that morning show. I watch her all the time. Watch her this morning, as a matter of fact. Enough! Now, bend forward.
Oprah Winfrey is a rising star. Her freewheeling manner and original style are helping to make this talk show host one of the most popular and successful faces in America.
I could never.
6 of Mr. Freeland's cars were used in the color purple. When Oprah Winfrey was just starting out with her program on TV, she was little known, but the color purple put her on the map.
Collects history, the kind that travels on 4 wheels, like this 1923 Yellowstone National Park sightseeing bus. It's one of 6 from his collection of antique autos that were used in the movie The Color Purple, shot in North Carolina last summer. Is that the original yellow?
Yeah. It was a yellow.
Inside of his antique barn in Hillsborough is the bulk of Mr. Freeland's collection of old cars and trucks. He began collecting about 35 years ago, all of these colorful contraptions with a character all their own, and vintages from 1902 to 1940.
And of course, I reckon I like the nostalgia of it, but it gives you a good feeling, though, that you come along the same time they did.
That's real leather, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to sit back and watch a movie and see your cars there in a big major motion picture?
Well, it gives you a little pleasure, and know that you're part of it. I just love to see old cars roll.
Mr. Freeland belongs to some antique car clubs that continue to put movie companies in touch with him. He's just received another call from some filmmakers. So by next summer, more of these beauties may be showing up in the movies.
Well, if you'd like to see Mr. Freeland's cars, they're located at the Daniel Boone Complex, which is just off of Interstate 85.
Here you see the Chariot used in the famous movie Ben-Hur. Who knows why Mr. Freeland decided to bring home some of the things he did, but for some reason, Meet Me in St. Louis streetcar struck his fancy. To Hillsborough it came. Now this is when we had a cafeteria at Daniel Boone, which was a popular dining place on Sunday afternoons especially.
Today I've stopped in at the Riverside Restaurant, and I wanted to stop by this afternoon and talk to the owner of the Riverside Restaurant, which is Dorothy Lee. What do you know about Mr. Freeland?
Mr. Freeland, I used to work for a long time ago when I was about 16 or 17 years old. I used to work in his motel and worked in his cafeteria, and we had the best time in the cafeteria with his wife and family and Mr. James Freeland. He treated us like family. It was 3 girls working with me: Betty Ruth with it, Sister Baby with it, Sister Baby with it, Betty Ruth with it, and Betty Ruth's mother. All us worked in the restaurant and also in Daniel Boone motel.
Okay.
And Mr. Freeland helped a whole lot of us people there. He had Mr. Percy Petit, Mr. James Worcester, and Mr. James Wilson's brother. All us worked there together. He did plenty houses he built houses over there at Fairview, and a bunch of them bought houses from him and stayed in the house until they deceased. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Percy Petit, and Mr. Wilson's brother, and also Mr. John Whitty.
When you say you worked at the restaurant, now where was this particular restaurant located?
Right down where the barber shop at Daniel Boone.
Was that the old cafeteria?
Yes.
Okay. So the working arrangements were pretty good with Mr. Freeland.
Yes, it was.
And the big barn that has hosted so many receptions and parties throughout the years. Donna operates this as part of her responsibility. Now here's an auction scene that was held at Daniel Boone. Oh, a lot of you will remember Shuford Dobson, who was one of the nicest people you'll ever know, the longest term tenant at Daniel Boone. Here you will see the motel when it had its early days, one of the few motels on I-85 at that time. More shops and more carriages. The Antique Mall was probably the anchor store for the antique store development in Daniel Boone. It's been in operation for probably 40 years or more. Now you get to see inside of Priscilla's English Tea Room. Priscilla Lane could fix some wonderful receptions and luncheons. It was just a great place to go for a casual, leisurely afternoon. There's Priscilla herself, getting ready to pour a spot of tea. Priscilla and her husband, Doyle, had an antique music museum. And here you will see one of the pianos. The little red caboose that up until very recently housed Donna's Follies, a vintage clothing store. The blacksmith shop has been there for a long time and is still operating. Many shoes have been bent into shape there, a lot of iron repairs, multi-services. Now we move over to Boone Square, which was the second phase of the development in Daniel Boone. Boone Square has provided a place for many small businesses, particularly startup businesses, to have a place to get their feet planted at an affordable rate. Many merchants, hundreds of merchants, have come in and out of Daniel Boone over the last 50 years. I wonder what our community would do without a place for small retailers and merchants. Good afternoon. I'm Kay Crawford, and on behalf of the Historical Foundation of Hillsborough and Orange County, I welcome you to an afternoon of warm-up discussions about two people we knew and loved as James and Maxine Freeland. And we're privileged to have this afternoon Mr. G. Coleman on my right, Donna Freeland on my left, and on down you'll see Lanny Freeland and Zach Freeland. And on the front row over here to my right is Jamie Freeland, Jim Richmond, Red Brown, and Sam Ezek. Thank you all for coming. I think this is going to be fun. The more we talk about it, the more stories we'll remember too, probably. So I gave you a couple of sheets of things that I could remember that Mr. Freeland was involved in, and asked that if you had a particular thing on that list that you want to tell a story about, to let me know. And we'll just begin by somebody that's got a story ready.
James Freeland and I go back a long ways. I remember when we were in the hardware business, and he was building houses up in Fairview, and he put a lot of people in homes up there that couldn't otherwise afford them. Of course, they were little four-room houses, but they were houses and the people soon became owners. But the thing that really sticks out in my mind is when I had the News of Orange County. Well, before I bought the News of Orange County, we were operating up there in the old Durham Central Carolina Bank building where the Pridgeon Jewelry is now. And when I bought the building, I decided, well, before I bought the building, before I bought the newspaper, we did the copy of the newspaper here, sent it to Chapel Hill. They set the type, and I went over on Wednesday morning and put it together, and they printed it. But when I bought it, I decided that I wanted to have a little more control and do the typesetting here in town, and just take it over to Chapel Hill and get it printed. And so the space we had wasn't adequate for that. So one day I was walking around over here and they were building the big barn. And down in the basement of the big barn, there was a big room. So I approached James and I said, what's the chances of renting that room down there? And he said, well, I kind of promised that to the Little League people. They want to have bingo there. I said, I'll let you know. So in a couple of days, he came by the office and he said, well, it looks like the people are going to rent the building for bingo. But said, how much floor space do you want? So I gave him an idea, and he said, well, draw it out on a piece of paper and give it to me, and I'll see what I can do. So I drew a square building and outlined what I wanted and gave it to him. Well, about a week later, he came by and said, you got a copy of that plan that you drew out? I said, I lost that one. And I said, yeah, I have a copy of it. So I gave him that. About 2 weeks later, I came over here, just wandering around, and he'd built a big building up here